most of the delegates were just waiting for a decision to emerge from the negotiation rooms. It seems, and even now, it was declared that there will be a final decision at 3 a.m. in the morning today. So now that even that deadline has passed and no decision has yet come. So right now, I think we'll be doing a review of only peripheral issues, and probably I'll do a review of almost overview of what has happened at COP or where we are presently. But otherwise, whenever the decision comes, I think today we are expecting it to come out today. But if at all there is agreement or consensus, I think that we'll review as and when it comes, or otherwise tomorrow morning again at 9 to 10, I'll review what has happened or the decision which might have emerged from COP28 finally. So now, if you remember yesterday, there was this furor over global stock take. Now this has become a major, stream, because as before COP28, the expectation was based on the global stock take report, which told us that the emissions are continuing to rise and most of the goals have not been reached, and we are way behind in terms of moving towards a net zero situation. So this report, everyone felt was very, it's a serious warning on what needs to be done. But even that warning seems to have not worked in pushing all the countries to a consensual decision. So GST continues to be a major decision which is expected any time now. But unlike COP28, if I remember COP26 and 27, there was more expectation on cover decision. So cover decision is basically, which covers the entire COP. But this time, no one is mentioning cover decision. The word itself has not been mentioned, but everyone is looking at GST, so global stock take related decision. So the draft which was shared day before on GST, it continues to be there, but it has not been updated. And yesterday it seems some text was circulated as if it's a leaked text, but we are not sure. It's not official, and it was probably false information which was circulated yesterday. So now, if you look at the overall problem, how do we address carbon emissions? I think that's a main, that has been the main goal of these COP meetings. No, under that, two important streams have been discussed for long. One is how do we adapt ourselves, and which country adapts to this situation, how they can adapt. I think that's one stream. And second is the mitigation. The mitigation is basically reducing these emissions, basically addressing the problem itself and try to reduce the growth of the problem, or and also removing the problem. So the solution to the problem, I think that is being discussed under mitigation. Now, under this, several other things started developing. So it included finance, it included some transition, just transition, principles of justice, climate justice. So all these developed, and then the market approaches were brought in. So the transformation of economies and how this transformation can be helped. So technology transfer. So all these aspects have come in, but now everyone is convinced that apart from all that, now the major action, climate action should be to phase out fossil fuels because carbon emissions are majorly contributed by fossil fuels, and even though the figure varies, some papers say 75% of carbon emissions come from fossil fuels, but some others say it is 92%. But overall, this is a major source of carbon emissions. So fossil fuel usage or consumption is being targeted. I think everyone is convinced. So there, within fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. I think these are the three which have been targeted. Now, oil includes all petroleum. So all the products which are coming out of petroleum, and which includes even plastics, because plastic pollution has been identified as a major problem. So, so these issues, I think. The fossil fuel phase out has become a major source uh, for emissions, and then now it's a target for reduction of emissions through phase out. So basically, usage has to be decreased. So that's a conclusion everyone is coming about. Now there is a lot of differences between different countries about phase out. Why, how, and when. I think those are the issues which are there. So now these are all interlinked, to be quantified goals. So fossil fuel phase out is everyone has agreed because we have seen on December 1st and 2nd when the leader summit happened, most of the speeches by these national leaders and mentioned this phase out as one of the solutions. And there were, broad commitment, but no leader has committed directly on fossil fuel phase out. But then, even later during COP28, in the plenaries and the side events, everywhere, I think people or the delegates said the fossil fuel phase out is required. In fact, the Majlis, on 10th December, on Sunday, when the COP28 president took initiative of organizing a special plenary, they named it as Majlis, where everyone was brought in, including observers, ministers, and other delegates. Even there, I think there was the overwhelming, mm, sentiment of bringing about agreement on fossil fuel phase out, except a few countries, where Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and other countries. But over almost out of 197 countries, I think almost 180 countries were looking for a decision on fossil fuel phase out. And even the remaining countries, I think there are a variation in their stand. The complete opposition is very less, so it could be a handful of countries, which includes the powerful countries like United States and most probably UK, Australia, Canada, and other countries. So, but European Union, surprisingly, European Union, Germany, France, I think they are openly saying we need a phase out. So, uh, and they related with this, even like countries, developing countries like China, India, they have a qualified stand on fossil fuel phase out. So they're saying we are committed to phase out, but we can't do it immediately or without finance. So our economies need to have transition, and that transition requires climate finance. So we need to discuss finance, and without finance, there is no phase out. So now there is again a large, common view across delegates and observers, CSOs, is that fossil fuel phase out without finance is also not good, and fossil fuel without referring to phase out also finance does not help. So we need this together. So not only these two, now there is a linkage with the just transition. So how the transition needs to be just and justiciable or equity, because who has to do phase out more? So that is where I think the reference goes back to the contributions to the overall carbon emissions. So which includes major countries. So now that is where US and other countries are being pointed out, but then they are trying to wriggle out of that situation by bringing other issues rather than directly countering the directly addressing the issue of phase out. So these three are together, they are interlinked, and then I think there are a lot of differences in the goals, about what kind of goals. So whether the phase out is, some people are talking 2030, some people are talking 2050. So when, how, and where, I think these are the questions which are again linked with this differences of opinion among different countries. So who is a question. So whether it is US, whether it is developed countries, whether it is rich countries, whether it is historically responsible countries, and then you have developing countries, then completely fossil fuel dependent countries. So like in coal, you have India, Indonesia, Australia, South Africa, and then you have for oil, oil and gas, countries which are dependent on oil gas, which includes Azerbaijan, which is going to organize COP29. Then you have Russia, you have China, you have US, Norway. So all these again are, and of course, our OPEC countries, Arabian countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all other countries whose economies are have become rich because of these fossil fuels. So I think who has to do when, by when, and how. I think that's a question. So when Saudi Arabia spoke on 10th December, they raised questions which I think many delegates felt is also reasonable or rational, because Saudi Arabia said this is our economy which is based on oil, and what do you want us to do if we want to step out of that oil dependent economy? and what are the implications of that. So there is this still, I think, if you look at, take a seat back and look at it, it is again and again coming back to the direction and the kind of economies which have been built on fossil fuels. So it's not easy to just say, just step out of this vehicle and then walk. So I think there are several viewpoints, perspectives which are going around. So the consensus is not emerging because of that. But then people have been constantly reminding, of the serious situation we are in. So you need to step out. We might have problems, we might face challenges, but the bigger challenge is how to, stop or reduce the impact of climate change, because the doomsday is becoming looming bigger and bigger every day as we continue with our emissions. So, in the face of that bigger issue, I think people are talking about what can be done. So, that's where the differences are coming about. Now, within phase out, as I keep mentioning, there are several issues which are on the table. So one is, parallel to phase out, tripling of renewable energy is one thing, and then the doubling of energy efficiency is second. Both these have been mentioned already in the GST draft, last three drafts and not in the fourth draft. The fourth draft, the goals have been removed, quantified goals. So, like tripling renewable energy is mentioned, but earlier it was tripling renewable energy to 11,000 gigawatts was there by 2030. So it was very specific in the earlier draft, but the fourth draft they removed it. Same with the doubling energy efficiency from 2 to 4%. Even that was removed. And then the third one was about no new investments in oil, gas, and coal. So this again is has been there. Then for reducing or phasing out fossil fuel subsidies. So most countries have been subsidizing exploration, consumption, and usage of fossil fuels. So this is another option which is on the table. Then the finance, So how the entire phase out has to be financed, and what kind of finance, where it comes from, because when you're shifting or reducing fossil fuels, we still require energy, and that energy has to come either from renewable energy, or then if we are looking at some other solution, I think even for that shift, finance is required. So finance again has come back there. But what I thought was the fossil fuel phase out targets are also important. Of course, some quarters they've been saying uh, how much can this be, say, linked with the IPCC reports. Somewhere that 1.5-degree pathways has been talked, but it has been there's no agreement either on that targets as well. So because some people feel 1.5-degree pathway is not completely evidence-based science, and some people say no, this this is good because this is comes from IPCC, but then some countries are unnecessarily targeted. So I think there is again this issue of phase out, how and what. So whether you want 2030 and whether the phase out is to be only in oil or should it include coal? Because India is saying coal, coal, we are dependent on coal. I think we have a right to continue usage because we are not we are our carbon emissions are lowest per capita. uh, so we have a right to more carbon budget. That means we want to continue with the usage of coal. So these are the arguments when it is coming about what and the specified targets. So overall, I think phase out is, even though it is now separated from other aspects of COP negotiation, but it is interlinked with adaptation, mitigation, and finance, all the regular streams of COP negotiations. So coming to finance, I think again there are a lot of dimensions which are still under discussion. So major one is developing countries and the contention between various countries is with this finance has to be public finance, not private finance. But then developed countries are saying, we need to access private finance because public finance may not be enough. And again, this target of every year we need $14 trillion to transition away from fossil fuel based economy. So all these quantified financial goals, I think they are still under negotiation because where does it come from? Who has to give? And then parallelly, there are debts. Most countries, poor countries are in debt, and some of these countries are going into severe debt because of climate change related disasters. So, like Pakistan, which was already under debt, but 2 years of climate disasters has pushed it further into debts. So, other countries in Africa, even small countries, they are still so debt, existing debt for various reasons, and the debt which is linked with the disasters being faced by the countries. So now there is two initiatives, Bridgetown initiative, and yesterday Kenya and France have initiated another platform on debt servicing. So the demand is again debt either has to be cancelled, there has to be a moratorium, and then further debt has to be at a reasonable interest rate, unlike the very high interest rates which are charged on that. And which institution, whether it is World Bank or multilateral development banks like World Bank, or you need a separate mechanism to do this. So a lot of these are still being discussed. Most developing countries, small countries, they are asking for grants instead of, loans, or, the form of finance is again an issue. And then I think again there is a stream which again linked with the loss and damage is compensation for the, climate victims, who are the countries which are facing climate disaster, whose contribution to emissions is low or zero, and then their contribution to carbon sinks, capturing carbon naturally. I think they are asking for compensation. They are asking for finance, which encourages them to keep those carbon sinks, like Amazon forest or countries with lot of forest like Congo. So they are saying we have to develop, but still we don't want to use this. If you have forest, deforestation, or even mining. So if we want to avoid this, we need funds for a shift in the economies. So the development finance is again is under discussion. And the liability again related with loss and damage, who is liable and why that liability can't be channelized in terms of finance. So the rich countries are saying we are responsible, but we are not the only one responsible. So we need to bring developing countries like India, China as well into this loss and damage fund. But then there are some studies which show even these countries are contributing to this climate finance, but without acknowledging that barriers are being put up on loss and damage fund. And within loss and damage fund, groups are saying whatever has been committed in COP28, maybe around 800 plus $1 million, it is pittance, and three international footballers together, they earn more than this, commitments. So basically, that comparison shows that whatever has been committed is very low, and these commitments are also they are still doubtful when it becomes a reality. So basically, when the implementation starts, I think again there the issue is there. So ultimately, the climate finance definition is still not yet been agreed upon. So I think some of the streams of negotiations have postponed the discussions to COP29 next year. So this, I think, is worrying for some people because when the global stock take has clearly brought out the issue that we are way behind, and emission gap report, various gap reports are also saying that we need to ramp up our actions. But this finance related negotiation streams, all of them have postponed their decisions, or and most of the decisions have are which are being done, as part of implementation. They have a lot of inane language. So it says urges, requests, acknowledges, notes, but the decisions themselves are not there in those texts. So the major barriers to GST, fossil fuel phase out, there are many, but overtly we could see OPEC, oil organization of petroleum production and export countries, OPEC countries, basically mostly Arabian countries, because of Colombia or Venezuela have not had so much opposition as Saudi Arabia and other countries. So USA, of course, is also being pointed out. But yesterday, John Kerry, climate representative of US, I think in a press conference, he said we need to focus on fossil fuel phase out. But within the negotiation rooms, I think the role play is something different. Saudi Arabia, of course, has also spoken against the fossil fuel phase out, or it raised a lot of questions. Iraq completely said no. India, of course, they are worried about the language used on coal. So, but again, it surprises me because India is also dependent on oil and gas. So, how do we phase out oil and gas apart from coal? I think it's still an issue within India. But then India has been saying we should include all fossil fuels because earlier only coal was targeted, COP 26, 27. So now, when all fossil fuels have been targeted, but still India, I don't think has come out categorically with any suggestion on how this can be done and what kind of targets it has in its mind. So there are a number of countries, but these are the major countries which are holding out. So we don't know what is stopping now in the GST negotiation stream because it's completely undercover. So there's no information on who is saying what and what kind of discussion deliberations are going in that. No, this is an overview, which again I think these are major you know strands. One is the global stocktake, finance, and then responsibility for this transition, responsibility for causing the problem, and then mitigation. So overall, within that, there are again several contentious issues. So for me, I thought what we were expecting from COP, not only 28, even before, that this is based on science and policies will be changed because of that. And all this is affecting ecology, environment, and we have lost a lot of species within the ecology. Environment is getting polluted in air, water, land. Pollution is very severe. And then the social issues where the poor and the vulnerable are facing the consequences, but the rich continue to grow. So there was expectation of discussions around these, and decisions were supposed to be made on these, aspects. But then what is happening is there are politics, and business has been involved. So in COP28, less than 3,000 delegates have been identified from oil company lobby. And of course, there could be other lobbies like a pharma lobby, uh, agriculture companies. So the business which has been benefiting from the current fossil fuel based economies, I think they have been there, and out of the 1 lakh plus delegates, there is this estimation that at least 20,000 could be from various businesses. And in fact, COP28 president himself comes from a business background, and UAE itself is a petrol state. So all this is there linked with the power and wealth. So the Russian president, he was there in UAE during this time, but it seems he was there to discuss the oil deal rather than, I know he did not attend COP 28, but he was there in Dubai during that time. Chinese president has not been attending any of the COPs in the last three COPs, and even this COP he was not there. US president was there before, but not this time. So the politics, politics behind and the politics on the fore, I think they are influencing the deliberations and probably acting as barrier in this. So the wealthy people continue to hold, the power to either decide or not to decide, and that is what is being played out at COP28. So a lot of people have, they said before, and now they're saying you can see what we said before is right. Basically, people said they were not expecting anything major from COP28, and they don't have any confidence that leaders will respond positively and immediately on the global problem. So we have seen that all this was there at play at all the COPs, not just COP28 in Dubai. So earlier there is denial, they're denying the science, ignoring the obvious facts, neglecting the vulnerable, obfuscation, so conspiring, confusing. And now, I think yesterday or before, Simon Steele, the Secretary of Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, said tactical blockades need to be removed or they need to melt away if we want some decision has to come. So tactical blockades, I think, is again, I think, is a major barrier. Incrementalism, he has identified incrementalism. So people want to take baby steps or small steps, just one or two decisions or one or two targets. So this incrementalism is also been a problem. And false solutions. I think false solutions like carbon capture. Now, many scientists are saying this is a fantasy rather than a reality, but yet it continues to be part of the discussions. And even under food security, now we are seeing FAO, WTO, WHO, all these international organizations, even UNEP, they are bringing alternative proteins. So I think the false solutions which benefit businesses, which enable the businesses to continue what they are doing, they are being pushed, and they are now many of them have entered the negotiation streams. So they are part of the text as well, which looks very incredible and you know surprising. So I think when the science, people are saying IPCC is a scientific body. When International Energy Agency is giving scientific reports, how come these false solutions have gained traction in these negotiations? Then exclusion. I think there is still that exclusion is going on. Even before in Glasgow, it was there. They said there was a space constraint and the number of delegates are high. But the same was repeated in Sharm el Sheikh and now in Dubai. So the civil society which is represented there largely comes from the rich countries. So even though many of them might be bringing up issues which are relevant to poor countries, nevertheless, I think the civil society from southern countries or south or global south, what we call as poor or developing countries, their participation is excluded in many ways, not directly, but I think they are not able to participate in this in many ways. So delegate composition, of course, is again who are part of this country delegation. This I have been raising for the past 3 years because in India, when we see the kind of delegates who are part of Indian delegation, I think the composition of delegates and even it was also flagged that many oil company delegates are part of different countries. So, how this delegate is getting composed within the country, and again, the resources required for that delegate to be there, because a delegate just cannot pick up bags and board a plane and go to the COP negotiation. There has to be continuum. So you need a human resource who is capacitated, who can negotiate, those capacity in terms of knowledge, in terms of skill, and probably finance. So the meeting arrangements, how these meeting arrangements are being done. So now we see a green zone and blue zone, and many of the people are prevented from entering blue zone. The language barriers, language, of course, many people who can't speak English is something who can't participate. But within people who have knowledge of English, the language of a legal language, I think even scientific language, that prevents many people from participating in this. And of course, poor countries, they at the most can send one or two delegates, but big delegations from rich countries, also mean poor countries can't participate in all the negotiation streams. Now there are a number of at least 359, I think 89 streams of negotiations. So that means 389 delegates, at least 389 delegates. And if you want to replace them every 8 hours to de-stress themselves, you need at least 600, 700 delegates from each country. And if at all they are there, I think that will be a big space is required. So ultimately, I think the question is again whether COP itself does it need to be so big, because most of the decisions have to be taken at the national level, and whether the national processes are replicating or replicating these kind of negotiations at the national level. I think again that's not happening. If you look at India, India does not discuss what has happened there in every COP, and its national statement is also not available within India. Only people who know where it can be found, they can get it. So I think overall, whether we need this global discussion, and what kind of discussions this at COP level has to happen. I think again we need to have a brainstorming on that, because now there are several branching are happening and major issues are not being focused upon. So all those issues are coming up. These are yesterday's reactions, and I talked about finance. So in the negotiation tracks, until we now 7 new texts have been released today on 13 December, and yesterday 26 new texts. And I have నాగేష్ సోమ గారు మీది సైలెంట్ పెట్టుకోండి. నాగేష్ అదే ఉన్నావా? హలో.
సార్ ఉన్నాను సార్, పెడుతున్నాను సార్.
So 26 new texts released yesterday. So again, out of this 26, 23 reached the draft decision. That means it will go before COP28 president of our finalization. And then until yesterday, 3 draft negotiation texts are still there. That means they are at still a basic level. So this, which includes Article 6.4, where carbon markets are discussed, Article 6.2, bilateral trading uh, on carbon, then Article 6.8, non-market approaches. But just now, about half an hour back, I've seen news that they have reached agreement on non-market approaches. I have not seen the text. Uh, of course, no. By 12th December there were 118. So that means still there are a lot number of texts where there is no agreement. Only few clean texts are there. 51 clean texts are there. So this is again yesterday's status where we can see the agreed texts are only 16, but nearly agreed, not agreed, no text is very huge. So the COP will not close until all these are, agreed upon. So some text has to be there where everyone has to sign upon. So basically that means either the text will be in, there will be zero text or the G or that language will be not about decision but inane language like notes, agrees, urges, requests. I think so. Whatever text we are seeing right now in different streams, they do not have a decision. So most of them have been postponed or it says again we'll meet or some other new committee will be formed. So actual decision may making text is still missing. So COP28 in that sense, what did they do in the last 12 days or 13 days? I think there's no agreement at all on many even small issues, leave alone the global stock take. So in that sense, the claim of COP28 president, he made that on 30th November and also on 1st December when the loss and damage fund was operational. He said this is a different COP and this COP28 is going to take decisions on actions. But if you look at on the 13th day, 14th day of this negotiation, not many have been agreed upon, is what we see. So again, these are negotiation tracks which are done. So there is there is this view which sums up, this is the pure quintessential COP experience that all addicts really yearn for. So addicts of COP is, I think that's a new stream of people. So endless waiting around with no plenaries or meeting schedule, venue being, uh, disassembled because most people are going away and there is rumors going around and then people are waiting. So even now we are waiting for a major decision to come out of this. So I think I'll stop here and probably again come back tomorrow because I'm not sure if any decision has come about within the period we have been doing this review right now. I'm not able to see anything. Decision has come. Right now, I think in Dubai it is in the morning. Okay, 1 second. I think there is a text on global stock take. Okay, this is again a 21-page text. Uh, I'll just share because We can see here that's a 21-page complete text, but I'm just going to the core of it because here what we see is this A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. These are these have been part of the first GST draft, and so this tripling renewable uh, energy capacity globally and doubling the global average annual rate of global energy efficiency by 2030. So this 2030 has been identified, but not the 11,000 gigawatt hours, and then improving to from 2% to 4%. And then accelerated efforts toward phase down of unabated coal power. Now, phase down comes back, not the phase out. So this has been pushed by India. So they wanted phase down. So even today, there's no clarity on what is the difference between phase out and phase down. And then unabated coal power, abated and unabated coal power. So abated basically means coal usage and the emissions are controlled or regulated. So this is about unabated coal power. So again, this is a very broad kind of inclusion. Then globally toward net zero emissions energy systems. I think somewhere this means they are still talking about carbon capture. So carbon capture technology. So here the major concern for me is inclusion of nuclear energy as part of zero or low emission technologies. This has been flagged before also. This is the only COP where nuclear has come back as part of the clean energy technologies. So I think this is worrying because now it has come into the draft decision. And then carbon capture and utilization. So the fancy technologies have been mentioned again here. Uh, then we have fossil fuel phase out that do not address energy poverty at or just transition as soon as possible. So again, it is non-specific, uh, mention. So the fossil fuel again, the issue is again inefficient. So are there any efficient or inefficient fossil fuel subsidies? And when you couple it with this fossil fuel subsidies that do not address energy poverty or just transition, I think this is pretty broad and non-specific. And then it says as soon as possible. So there is no specificity behind this. So this again, I think. Is most probably a consensual text because it says this is the draft decision. So I think whatever has emerged out of that long wait is not to the satisfaction uh, of at least us, people like us who wanted a major decision. Even the global goal on the adaptation, which is again a major text which has been looked at, has also been released. But again, the language is again very vague and not any specific text is not there. So overall, I think this COP28 is a failure in that sense because when it began, there was expectation that there were five expectations. One is global stock take. So a major decision on global stock take, and we have seen what kind of decision has been taken, and then loss and damage operationalization has been declared, and on the December 1st. But then through the COP28 days, nothing much has been achieved on loss and damage in terms of operationalization, when, how, in what form, all those still are under negotiation. And third is climate finance, because the Paris Agreement, there was this goal of $100 billion, and even I think yesterday, sorry, in one of the decisions, there is a acknowledgement that this goal has not been reached, and there is a call for ramping up contributions to this, climate finance. And then, of course, the other issues on adaptation and mitigation, where a lot of hopes were there on adaptation, the global goal on adaptation, and even that, I think we have a lot of inane language, or it does not show any progress in the last 12 days. And of course, mitigation, the focus was completely on carbon capture technologies or carbon trading and markets, rather than on how to reduce in terms of real emissions. So I think overall we can see that this COP has failed clearly in setting any meaningful, effective, and fair transition strategies. Uh, and I don't expect even this might happen in next COP 29 in Azerbaijan, because through the year, the whatever activities they are taken up, so that next COP decisions are taken. I think those are reflected in some of these texts, but I think it is still not yet happened. Let me just give you an overview of decisions. So this is again the latest, given by Carbon brief. So the status again, you can see 31 are agreed, but this agreed, yeah, the language, we can see that within those agreed is urging, requests, notes, all those kind of things, but not decides. So the deciding agreements is very less or almost zero. Then you have nearly agreed, not agreed is more postponed. I think we need to compare with other COPs. So you have 26 decisions which have been postponed. So with all that investment, I mean, in the COP meetings, so many people have been there, so much energy has been consumed, so much, resources have been consumed, but then they has merely postponed it. So I think here it shows, what I've been saying, that country delegations are not working properly. So these are again tables which show what has been agreed, where it has not been agreed. So this is a little old one, we have not yet updated. So you can see in global stock take they agreed, but the draft has been released just in a few minutes back. So again, you can see clear agriculture and food security. Now, this has been flagged as the most important element in adaptation and also in mitigation, but that decision has been postponed. Long-term standing committee on finance not agreed. Long-term finance not agreed. Bilateral trading, not agreed. Carbon market, not agreed. So many things, there is no agreement at all. Many important aspects. So I think I'll stop here because this COP is a big failure in terms of, in my perspective. I'm a distant observer. I'm not an expert in that sense, but maybe we'll see more reviews of COP28, and maybe from India. There have been this time. There have been a lot of media representatives there. I've seen Hindu filing stories regularly. Hindustan Times is there, and even Down to Earth had a special team there. So there are quite a few Indian media represented there. They might report or review COP28, and they are from their own perspective because they are sitting there, right there, participating in that. But I am not from media, but I am a simple a person who is looking for what kind of people interests are being pushed in this COP28, and I see none are there. And Indian interests, again, they are very vague. They have gone unrepresented. So I feel overall, from Indian point of view, from a distant observation point of view, I think this COP has not delivered what has been expected out of it. So thank you. I'll stop here. I think this will end our reviews. Uh, Thank you all for joining me. ఇక్కడ స్పీక్ ఇన్ తెలుగు. నిన్న COP28 చివరి దినం, అక్టోబర్ 12th December 11 గంటలకి దాన్ని ముగింపు పలకాల్సింది. నిన్న కూడా కాలేదు. ఇవాళ కూడా ఈరోజు ఒక 15 నిమిషాల ముందు ఒక ప్రముఖ నిర్ణయము ఇప్పుడే వెలువడింది. బహుశా ఇప్పుడు ప్లీనరీ ఉండొచ్చు. అందులో COP28 ప్రెసిడెంట్ వీళ్ళందరూ మాట్లాడి ముగిస్తారు. కాకపోతే ఇప్పటికే చాలా మంది ప్రతినిధులు వెళ్ళిపోయారు, వాపసు వెళ్ళిపోయారు. నిన్న 12 గంటలకే వెళ్ళిపోయిన వాళ్ళు చాలా మంది, సాయంత్రం కూడా చాలా మంది వెళ్ళిపోయారు. సో బహుశా కొద్ది మంది తోటి ప్లీనరీ జరుగుతుంది. అయితే ఇప్పుడు వచ్చిన ఒక అర్ధ గంట ముందు వచ్చిన టెక్స్ట్ గ్లోబల్ స్టాక్ టేక్, దాని గురించి అందరూ ఇప్పటిదాకా వేచి చూస్తున్నారు. అది దాంట్లో మొట్టమొదట ఇప్పుడు ఇది 5వ డ్రాఫ్ట్. ఇప్పుడు అర్ధ గంట ముందు వచ్చింది 5వసారి దాన్ని రివైజ్ చేశారు, దాన్ని మార్చారు. అయితే మొదటి 3లో ఉన్నంత గట్టి భాష ఈ 5వ దాంట్లో లేదు. అంటే ఈ ఫాసిల్ ఫ్యూయల్ శిలాజ ఇంధనాలను క్రమంగా తగ్గించాలని మొదటి నుంచి ఉన్న డిమాండ్ ఏదైతే ఉందో దాన్ని ఈ 5 డ్రాఫ్ట్లలో క్రమంగా తగ్గించుకుంటూ వచ్చారు. అంటే ఆ నిర్ణయం ఇప్పుడు చివరికి అందరూ ఏకాభిప్రాయం తోటి అన్నది ఏంటంటే, ఈ మనము పునరుత్పాదక శక్తి వనరులు మూడింతలు పెంచాలని, తర్వాత ఇంధన పొదుపు కూడా దాని మీద ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయాలని. కానీ ఇది కాక ఇదివరకు ఏంటంటే ఎప్పుడు ఎంత అని వాళ్ళు స్పష్టంగా పేర్కొన్నారు. ఇప్పుడు అది చేయలేదు. తర్వాత కొత్తగా ఈ అణుశక్తి, ఇది ప్రత్యామ్నాయ వనరులో అణుశక్తిని చేర్చారు. ఇదివరకు లేదు. అణుశక్తితోటి అనేక సమస్యలు ఉన్న నేపథ్యంలో దీన్ని ఈసారి మొట్టమొదటిసారి COP28లో తీసుకురావడం జరిగింది. ఇది కాక ఇప్పుడు ఎవరు చేయాలి? మన బొగ్గు మీద ఆధారపడి చాలా దేశాలు ఉన్నాయి, అందులో భారతదేశం కూడా ఉంది. మరి బొగ్గుని ఫేజ్ డౌన్ చేయాలని అన్నారు. ఫేజ్ డౌన్, ఫేజ్ అవుట్ పదాల మధ్య తేడా ఏంది చాలా మందికి తెలియదు. అసలు ఎవరికీ తెలియదు. ఎందుకు ఆ పదం కాక ఇది వాడుతున్నారో కూడా ఎక్కడ మనకి ఒక ఎక్స్‌ప్లనేషన్ అంటూ ఉండదు. కాకపోతే ఏందంటే దీన్ని ఆలస్యం జేయాలి. అంటే దీని మీద ఆధారపడి ఏదైతే శక్తి విద్యుత్ ఉత్పత్తి జరుగుతుందో, ఇది మేము కొనసాగిస్తామని భారతదేశం జెప్తుంది. మిగతా దేశాలు గూడా బొగ్గు మీ బొగ్గు మీద ఆధారపడడం తగ్గించడానికి ఇష్టంగా లేవు. అట్లా తర్వాత ఈ ఆయిల్ అండ్ గ్యాస్ ఏదైతే ఉందో దీని మీద ఆధారపడి దాదాపు 10, 15 దేశాలు వీళ్ళన్నీ ధనిక దేశాలు. అది అరబ్ దేశాల్లో సౌదీ అరేబియా కావచ్చు, ఇరాక్ కావచ్చు, కువైట్, యునైటెడ్ అరబ్ ఎమిరేట్స్. కాకపోతే ఇరాక్ ఈ యుద్ధం వల్ల నష్టపోయింది. అంతర్గత యుద్ధం, ఐఎస్ఐఎస్ యుద్ధం వల్ల గాని ఈ అరబ్ దేశాలు, అమెరికా, బ్రిటన్ లాంటి దేశాలు, నార్వే దేశము వీళ్ళందరికీ ఆయిల్ నుంచే వాళ్ళకు వాళ్ళ ఎకానమీ నడుస్తది. వాళ్ళ ఆర్థిక వాళ్ళకి లాభాలున్నాయి. వీళ్ళు దీని మీద ఒక గట్టి నిర్ణయం, తక్షణ నిర్ణయం రావడాన్ని వ్యతిరేకించారు. వాళ్ళ ఆహ్, అభిప్రాయం మేరకే ఇప్పుడు ఈ గ్లోబల్ స్టాక్ టెక్‌లో దాని మీద భాష సరళం జేసి అది అసలు ఒక ప్రత్యక్ష చర్య దిశగా ఉండకుండా ఆ భాష ఆఖరికి ఏకాభిప్రాయం పేరిట విడుదల చేయడం జరిగింది. ఇది గాక ఇంకా అనేక విషయాల మీద ఈ COP28 నుంచి ఆశలు ఉండినాయి. ఎందుకంటే గ్లోబల్ స్టాక్ టేక్ ఏదైతే పారిస్ ఒప్పందం నేపథ్యంలో 5 ఏండ్ల తర్వాత మనం ఎంతవరకు ప్రగతి సాధించామనే అంచనాలో ఆహ్, అది ఆలస్యమైన ఈ సంవత్సరము ఆ గ్లోబల్ స్టాక్ టేక్ రిపోర్ట్ వచ్చింది. ఆ నివేదిక చెప్పింది అసలు మనము అనుకున్న దిశగా చాలా వెనకబడి ఉన్నాము. చాలా గ్యాప్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఇటువైపేమో కార్బన్ ఉద్గారాలు పెరుగుతున్నాయి. తగ్గించే బదులు పెరుగుతున్నాయి. తగ్గింపు వైపు ఏమీ లేదు. ఇంకా పెట్టుబడులు గూడా పెంచుతున్నారు అని చాలా తీవ్రమైన నివేదిక ఈ గ్లోబల్ స్టాక్ టేక్ ఇచ్చింది. ఆ నేపథ్యంలో ఈ COP28 జరుగుతుంది. కాబట్టి ఈ అందరూ ఒక ఆహ్, సమిష్టి నిర్ణయం వస్తుంది. ఈ శిలాజ ఇంధనాలను తగ్గించడానికని ఆశించారు గానీ, ఈరోజు 13 డిసెంబర్ నాడు వాళ్ళు ఏకాభిప్రాయం పేరిట విడుదల చేసిన ప్రతి చూస్తే మాత్రం ఇది ఆహ్, ఆశించిన మేరకు ఆహ్, దాని నుంచి బహుశా 100% వెనకబడినట్టే కనపడుతుంది. నిధుల గురించి గూడా చాలా తీవ్రమైన చర్చ జరిగింది. లాస్ అండ్ డ్యామేజ్ ఫండ్ కావాలని చాలా దేశాలు పట్టుబడినాయి. అది డిసెంబర్ 1 నాడు మేము అది ఆ ఫండ్ దాన్ని అమలుకి నిర్ణయం తీసుకున్నాము. దానికి కావాల్సిన నిధులు గూడా దాదాపు 15 దేశాలు కలిపి $800 మిలియన్ మేమిస్తామని ప్రకటనలు చేశారు. హామీ ఇచ్చారు. కానీ అది ఈ 12 రోజులలో ఎట్లా ఇస్తాము? ఏ విధంగా ఇస్తాము? అనే దాని మీద గూడా చర్చలు జరిగినాయి గానీ, మళ్ళీ ఒక కంక్లూజన్‌కి రాలేదిక్కడ. అంటే ఆ సంపూర్ణత కనపడలేదు. అక్కడ గూడా ఈ COP28 విఫలమైనట్టే కనపడుతుంది. తర్వాత ఆహ్, మనకు లాస్ అండ్ డ్యామేజ్ ఫండ్ ఇవ్వలేదు. తర్వాత సాధారణంగా క్లైమేట్ ఫైనాన్స్ ఇదైతే మార్పు కొరకు మారాలి, అన్ని దేశాలు మారాలి అన్నప్పుడు ఆ మార్చడానికి అవసరమైన నిధులు ఈ ధనిక దేశాలు ఇస్తామని వాగ్దానం చేసినాయి. పారిస్ ఒప్పందంలో $100 బిలియన్ అన్నారు. అది ఇప్పటివరకు ఇవ్వలేదు. అది కేవలము మిలియన్లలో ఉంది, బిలియన్లలో లేదని అభివృద్ధి చెందిన దేశాలు అంటుంటే, ఓఈసీడీ ఏమో ఒక నివేదిక ఇచ్చి దాదాపు $89 బిలియన్ ఇప్పటికే ఇచ్చినామంటారు. అంటే ఈ నిధులు ఇవ్వడంలో గూడా దృక్పథం వాళ్ళు అంటున్నది ఒకటి, వీళ్ళు ఆశిస్తున్నది ఒకటిగా తయారైంది. మన ప్రభుత్వ నిధులే పబ్లిక్ ఫైనాన్స్ ఇవ్వండి అని వీళ్ళు అడుగుతున్నారు. వాళ్ళేమో ధనిక దేశాలు పబ్లిక్ ఫైనాన్స్ సరిపోదు, ప్రైవేట్ ఫైనాన్స్ అంటే అప్పులు తీసుకోండి లేదా కంపెనీలు పెట్టుబడులు పెడతాయి. సో ఇట్లా ఈ ఏ రకమైన నిధులు, ఆ నిధులు ఎవరు ఇస్తారు, దీని మీద కూడా ఏకాభిప్రాయం లేకుండా పోయింది. ఇప్పటికే అనేక దేశాలు అప్పుల్లో బారిన పడ్డాయి. మరి ఈ అప్పుల సంగతి కూడా సరళీకృతం చేయండి. అప్పులు తీర్చడం గురించి దాన్ని ఏది పోస్ట్పోన్ చేయడము, కిస్తీలు కట్టడము ఆలస్యం చేయడము, లేదా వడ్డీలు తగ్గించండి అని ఇట్లాంటి అనేక డిమాండ్లు ఉన్నా కూడా దాని మీద కూడా ఒక ఫలప్రదమైన నిర్ణయం జరగలేదు. ఇక అడాప్టేషన్ అంటే ఈ క్లైమేట్ చేంజ్ వస్తుంది, ప్రకృతి ఉత్పాతాలు జరుగుతున్నాయి, ఉత్పాతాల వల్ల నష్టపోతున్నారు, అది కరువు వస్తుంది, వరదలు వస్తున్నాయి, ఇంకా అనేక రూపాల్లో ఈ వాతావరణ మార్పు వివిధ దేశాల మీద ఒత్తిడి పెంచుతున్నాయి. అటు మన తుఫాన్లు కావచ్చు, సముద్ర మట్టం పెరిగి అలలు వచ్చి అనేక దేశాల్లో ఇండ్లు కోల్పోయిండ్రు, క్లైమేట్ రెఫ్యూజెస్ పెరుగుతున్నారు. ఇవన్నీ ఉన్నప్పుడు దీనికి ఈ అడాప్టేషన్ అంటే ఈ పరిస్థితికి ఎట్లా మనం తట్టుకోగలుగుతాము, దీనికి తగిన నివారణ చర్యలు ఏంది, వీటి మీద కూడా ఏదన్నా మంచి నిర్ణయం జరుగుతుందని ఆశించారు, కానీ అది కూడా జరగలేదు. ఇక మిటిగేషన్ అని అంటే ఈ ఎమిషన్స్, ఈ ఉద్గారాలను తగ్గించడానికి తీసుకునే చర్యలు, అది పరిశ్రమల్లో కావచ్చు, రవాణా రంగంలో కావచ్చు, శక్తి రంగంలో కావచ్చు, ఇంకా అనేక రంగాల్లో డీకార్బనైజేషన్ అంటే కర్బన సోర్సెస్ మీద ఆధారపడి తగ్గించడం, వీటి గురించి కూడా నిర్ణయాలు తీసుకుంటారని ఆశించారు, కానీ అవి కూడా ఫలప్రదం కాలేదు. మొత్తంగా ఈ 5 అంశాల మీద ఆశించిన మేరకు నిర్ణయాలు రాలేదు. ఈ లెక్కన ఈ COP28 ఫలప్రదం కాలేదు, సఫలీకృతం కాలేదు, ఇది పూర్తిగా విఫలమైంది అని నాకైతే అనిపిస్తుంది. బహుశా మన అక్కడ మనమేమో దూరం నుంచి చూసి ఇవన్నీ సమీక్ష చేస్తున్నాం, కానీ అక్కడ పోయిన వాళ్ళు, అక్కడ ఉన్న వాళ్ళు, మన దేశం ఇప్పుడు దుబాయ్ దగ్గరనే కనుక చాలా మంది అక్కడ ఉన్నారు భారతదేశం నుంచి. దాదాపు 900 మంది మన డెలిగేట్స్ ఉన్నారు, ఇంకా మీడియా ప్రతినిధులు కూడా ఉన్నారు. మరి వీళ్ళందరూ వచ్చినాక వీళ్ళ అభిప్రాయం ఏముంటుందని చూడాలి. కానీ స్పష్టంగా మనకు ఇవన్నీ చూస్తే మాత్రం COP28 అంతకుముందు ఉన్న కాప్ సదస్సుల కంటే పూర్తిగా విఫలమైనట్టు కనపడుతున్నది. సో ఈ వైఫల్యం యొక్క ప్రభావము భారతదేశం మీద చాలా ఎక్కువగా ఉంటుంది. ఎందుకంటే భారతదేశం ఇప్పటికే మనం 2-3 ఏళ్ల నుంచి చూస్తున్నాం, అన్ని రాష్ట్రాల్లో కూడా ఈ ప్రకృతి ఉత్పాతాల వల్ల చాలా తీవ్ర నష్టము మనకు కనపడుతుంది. వ్యవసాయము, ఆహార ఉత్పత్తి మీద కూడా ఈ ప్రభావం చాలా ఎక్కువగా ఉండే అవకాశం ఉంది. రాబోయే 2-3 ఏళ్లలో ఇది మన ఆర్థిక రంగాన్ని, మన యొక్క అభివృద్ధిని, మన ప్రగతిని, సాధారణ జీవనాన్ని తీవ్రంగా ప్రభావితం చేసే పరిస్థితులు ఉన్నాయి. కానీ మన దేశంలో ఇప్పుడు రాబోయే 6 నెలల్లో జాతీయ ఎన్నికలు జరుగుతాయి, పార్లమెంట్ కొరకు, ఇంకా అనేక రాష్ట్రాలకు. ఇప్పటికే ఒక 5 రాష్ట్రాలకు ఎన్నికలు జరిగినాయి. ఈ ఎన్నికల్లో కూడా ఎక్కడ కూడా ఈ విషయాలు గురించి ఏ ఒక్క రాజకీయ పార్టీ కూడా చర్చించలేదు. ఇక మరి ఇప్పుడు రాబోయే పార్లమెంటరీ ఎలక్షన్లలో ఇది చర్చిస్తే అసలు ఈ విషయం మాట్లాడతారా అనేది కూడా అనుమానమే. అటు బీజేపీ కానీ, కాంగ్రెస్ కానీ ఇంకా దాదాపు 200 పైన ఉన్న ఏ ఒక్క పొలిటికల్ పార్టీ కూడా ఇది అసలు సమస్యనే కాదు, ఇది అసలు అది ఏదో వాళ్ళు ఏదో మాట్లాడుకుంటున్నారు అన్నట్టు ఆ వాళ్ళ యొక్క ధోరణి మనకు కనపడుతుంది. అందుకే మనం ఇప్పటికైనా మనము అంటే మనం చదువుకున్న వాళ్ళము, కొద్దిగా సామాజిక స్పృహ ఉన్న వాళ్ళము మేల్కొని ప్రజలను మేల్కొల్పాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. ప్రజలకు ఈ సమస్య, వాళ్ళు ఎదుర్కొంటున్న సమస్య ఎక్కడి నుంచి వస్తుంది, ఎవరి వలన వస్తుంది, దీనికి పరిష్కారాలు ఏంది అనేది మనము ఆ వాళ్ళతో పాటు చర్చించి ఆ అవగాహన పెంచి ఆ అవగాహన ద్వారా ప్రభుత్వాల మీద ఒత్తిడి తెచ్చి ఒక సానుకూల నిర్ణయాలు లేదా విధానాలు తీసుకురావాల్సిన బాధ్యత మన మీద ఉంది. కాబట్టి మనం అందరము రాబోయే సంవత్సరం వచ్చే ఇప్పుడు COP29 మళ్ళీ నవంబర్లో జరగబోతుంది 2024లో. ఈ సంవత్సర కాలంలో ఆ, ఈ సమస్యకు మనం అంకితమై దీని మీద ఇంకా ఇంకా విస్తృతంగా చర్చలు, సమావేశాలు పెట్టి మాట్లాడదామని ఆశిస్తూ నేను ఈ సమీక్ష ముగిస్తున్నాను. ధన్యవాదాలు.